2 days ago, I posted a question to a Discord full of like 16 people total, a lot of which I play D&D with. It was simple. What's your opinion on fudging dice rolls? I have my own viewpoint, but I wanted to have an open forum of discussion, like the title says. This is a mixed bag of perspectives, most of them being people that run games, but we also had a few exclusively D&D players chime in on the conversation too. To join in, comment your opinion before actually watching the rest of the video so that you can see how other people's views differ once you've got them down. And maybe like reply to it 10 minutes after and be like, maybe my mind has been changed, yada yada yada. Because I want to see how your opinion differs, changes, alters, or if it stays the same depending on what we've talked about. This is going to be like a bit of a more open, like I'm going to be reading off it's not exactly a script, but I've got what they've said written down here, and this is like the longest, the biggest amount of stuff I've written in a while, so be a little patient on that. But it's a whole discussion thing. I've got to cover a bunch of different perspectives here instead of mine. And here are the results. So one of my friends that have been playing tabletop games for, I think, the longest out of everyone in the group, I might be wrong, but I think I'm pretty close, is their perspective was the first to actually come in, so I'll talk about that first. They mentioned that sometimes the dice can be the enemy of fun, and he said that if that happens, if you're fudging, it should only be in service of fun. He also said that if the dungeon master is fudging rolls, he doesn't want to know, don't talk about that to him. And finally he added that not rolling fudged rolls is the lawful neutral approach, which is a very apt description. So I agree with a lot of this, but the one thing that sticks out to me is that the dice can be the enemy of fun, which of course I agree, the dice aren't always going to be on your side, but there's some scenarios where as a DM you should still let the dice do their thing, at least from my experience. Even if it isn't fun for the moment, for the player, in that short amount of time. Like killing a character with an alarmingly good roll. There was a story that Matt Colville told in one of his games where he had ended up killing a player character. The player was frustrated and left the table, and Matt tried to explain to him why this happened, and he didn't want to hear it. Then half an hour he came back and said, that's fine. I'm excited to make a new character now. Just don't talk to me about what happened. And I'd personally be more butthurt if I, maybe a year down the line, learn that the DM let my character live by like changing the fate of a role because I enjoyed playing them. So therefore, if you are altering roles, like this guy said, don't tell anyone. Also, another thing that you should be doing right now, if you aren't already, is subscribing and joining my Discord, which is in the description. I hate that I'm doing this early now, dude. I'm gonna... but it helps me. A person in the Discord that I've been playing with the most right now says that she hasn't fudged rolls a single time, at least to her memory. Well done, we've all been tempted. I've done it. And that she thinks more interesting moments can be crafted if you play with a roll or two, even though she hasn't done it herself. She used an example where if an NPC learns something the party wants to hide, it can lead to a cool quest hook or a cool moment that she wants to happen. So like a fudged insight check from that NPC, getting like a 25 on a player's 24 deception, can lead them to that. I personally don't agree with this theory, since there is plenty of other ways that you could get these moments to happen, or if the party roll good, then maybe it wasn't supposed to happen in the first place. Another one of my players who runs a game, I think she does, that says that sometimes she fudges in combat, and only in combat, she mentioned, but it's only when it's to either empower or test a character. She said that basically if someone's having a hard time in combat, they can still feel cool with like being missed by a load of enemies, even if they're rolling 2s on their attack rolls, or if they're using like saving throw spells or cantrips, making the enemies fail their saves. And I think that similarly, if a player is just steamrolling an encounter and the rest are like lagging behind, bringing them down to earth with a fake crit can cause cool tension. This is also something I completely fundamentally disagree with, as yeah, you can bring a player up or down with manipulated rolls during a fight, get everyone on an even playing field. I don't think that's what D&D is all about. Sometimes someone might be on a higher playing field or a lower playing field at different points in different parts of the game. And I think it also ruins the opportunity for a redemption at a later point, or a lesson learned in a later fight or other situation. It feels really good to, like, so you're initially messing up in combat, you're rolling really bad, and you as a player make a few bad calls and stuff, and the dice aren't helping you out. And then you walk into the next room of the dungeon and there's a puzzle and you figure it out and no one else does. That is the kind of cool stuff that I think merits not fudging rolls in a combat situation to keep everyone on that even sort of playing field, or give someone that cool moment. Another friend of mine says that the dice can be kind of manipulated in the same way as the rule of cool, meaning that if the party have this hugely well-planned master scheme that all hinges on a failed save, he might fudge the number to allow it to work. So this is a way of doing it that I can actually see a reason for, and since it only empowers players but not just for the sake of it, it seems to reward their good thinking and commitment. And again, players don't want to know that you're doing that at all, because a lot of D&D is about verisimilitude, believing that what you're playing is actually happening, even just a little bit, because then that really gets you into the story, gets you invested in the characters around you. And if you know that the dungeon master is making stuff up, which you know they're making stuff up, but if they're doing it on the fly and you know they are, and they're changing things to make things work a different way, it doesn't feel like fate's flowing as it should, because dice are the mediators and they make us feel more immersed than anything else could. They're the main points. The others are in essence like variants on what I've said and stuff like that, on what others have said even. And now it's time for this boy's perspective, this guy. So I haven't fudged a roll in a long time, but when I was initially starting, I will admit I used to do it a lot more often than I'd like to admit. It wasn't like a regular thing, but it certainly wasn't rare for me to do it, which, little embarrassing. And this meant that for me, like, my players never knew, but it felt as if I controlled the tension and outcomes too much, and therefore I came up with a solution at some point around a year ago. Maybe it was more than that, I can't really remember. I started exclusively rolling out in the open. So I run games using Roll20 right now, and there's a function that you can do as a DM which makes every single one of your rolls entirely public and everyone can see them on the screen. And if I'm running a game in person, as of recent, I've rarely been putting a DM screen up. I've always been like rolling in the open. I think as of recent there were a few games where I'd actually kept the DM screen up, but it was purely because of the setup, and it worked that way. And since I started having my dice open, having them ready, my player characters started dying at an abnormally high rate in comparison to all the other games that I've played in and stuff like that. And I think that means as DMs, a lot of us are fudging more than you think. Don't ask your DM if they are, because it's a trust thing. I personally don't believe DMs should. That's my thing. And as this is a D&D discussion, I don't want you to fully believe me. I just want you to hear me out and all the other people in my Discord that kind of made this discussion happen. My method has its flaws, but ultimately it builds a lot more trust between me and my players, since they know I cannot manipulate the rolls behind the screen, because they're all there out in the open for them to see. Has your opinion been changed? Are you sticking with your guns? Yada, yada, yada. Do you agree with anything anyone here has said and disagree with something else? Let us know. This is an open forum for discussion, and the discussion can continue forevermore in our Discord, which you can find in the description. Do all the things to a YouTube video that you would usually do, please. It helps me out and stuff like that. And hopefully see you around for another discussion if I keep this sort of series up. This might be a one-time thing. I don't know. And yeah, I'm going to go now. Scotty, beam me up. You there, man?